Top Med Talk.
Well, hello and welcome. It's Top Med Talk, and we are here in Prato, Italy for the 7th Collaborative Clinical Trials in Anesthesiology. I'm Desiree, Chappell, your host, and I'm joined by all of my co-hosts that we have here on Top Med Talk here in Prato for the meeting, and it is so exciting. So we'll start with former editor-in-chief Monty Mythen and founder of Top Med Talk.
Founder of Top Med Talk. Desiree, good to be here. Hear the clatter in the background of the people excitedly getting their coffees, their espressos and cappuccinos going in the morning.
Yeah.
Good to be back. Well, I'm just about to step out, though.
Yeah.
Because, but you found some new friends.
We have found some new friends. So we have our new editor-in-chief, Mike Grocott. Hello, Mike.
Good morning.
How are you?
Really good. Really looking forward to 3 more days in Prato. After one day already.
One day already. I know, it's been great.
We had this great platform trials workshop yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is a really neat start to the week. Lots of very interesting commentary from both trialists and journal editors.
Yeah, hold on to that for a moment because we're going to take a deep dive on that. And one of our editors and hosts here on Top Med Talk who held the fort down in Australia this year is Andy Cumpstey, back again.
Thanks for having me, Desiree. It's great to be here. It's my first time at the meeting. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to a great 3 days. There was a really nice welcome meeting yesterday where everyone was already starting to buzz about their trial results and hear what other people have been doing. So it's going to be really good to get started.
How was Australia, Andy? I've been dying to know.
Australia was fantastic. Really good. Really good. Well, 4 days at the main meeting.
Yeah.
But also the before and after meetings with the CPD that Anska put on. It was a really, really good event.
Yeah, well, you and Kate Leslie really did us proud here on Top Med Talk. Lots of great conversations, and it was super good. But our other co-host in Australia, Kate Leslie, who also was my co-host at Euro Anesthesia this year. Kate.
We had a great time, Desiree, in Munich at the ESA. We did interviews with all of the leadership of the ESA.
Yeah.
Or ASIAC, as we learned to call it.
That's right.
Yeah. And then we talked to some of the great speakers there from around Europe and around the world.
Yeah.
It's been a hectic couple of weeks.
We were keeping you busy, haven't we?
Totally.
Have you had fun?
Oh, I have. And Prato is the best meeting of all because it's a collection of clinical trialists from all around the world and expert statisticians to keep you awake at the afternoon session after lunch, talking about frequentist and Bayesian statistics that Mike Grocott's going to explain to us shortly.
Yeah.
Very shortly.
Yeah.
Maybe about a sentence.
Okay. Well, do tell about how yesterday was.
Right, yes, I'm like, what is Bayes' theorem?
It's all about what you thought before.
No, we don't really want to.
No.
Why did you spend a whole day discussing...
it's all about prior and posterior.
What about... Okay. Isn't life's all about that, though, isn't it? Yeah. The probabilities of things happening, etc. So why are we spending a whole day talking about platform trials? What's so interesting about the railway system that we have done?
Honestly.
I know. Can't take them anywhere.
You know what a platform trial is.
Okay. Give us the executive summary.
Yeah.
So
Highlight.
Any trial in which you're looking at evaluating multiple interventions, multiple arms, potentially multiple stages to the trial, and you have a master protocol that underpins the whole trial, and then you might have some appendices to that, you might have some additional modular protocols, and the argument is that through combining those trials, you have a big gain in both efficiency, so the number of patients that need recruiting, and time, partly because of the efficiency gain and partly because all the paraphernalia of setting up and closing down a trial, the site visits and all that kind of thing, are done once, and then there's a little bit of tweaking rather than huge effort into single 2-arm comparisons.
So it sounds like the future to me. I've talked to you a bit about it in the past. I've read quite a lot about it now. The one thing that's disappointing is everyone keeps telling me how expensive it's going to be.
But that's what researchers do, isn't it?
No, but I thought the idea was to get more efficient. It would get cheaper.
I think...
Why? So why? Because
I think they're individually expensive.
Okay.
But you're getting multiple trials from your platform. So I think you
bigger
start
bang
to
for your
divide,
buck kind of
thing. You start to divide down the pairwise comparisons of control versus...
So what do you spend the money on then?
All the clever statisticians.
Okay.
Of which there's I think there's a lot of... What was talked about a lot yesterday was the complexity of establishing and managing and then analysing these, how you deal with having a master protocol that anticipates potential future changes, how you deal with stopping rules. So at what point, if you've got a continuous ongoing trial, at what point do you say, this arm's won, this arm's lost, or we're never going to find a difference?
And is that where the frequentist Bayesian discussion comes in then?
Very much so.
But I thought you were allowed to do both now. Can't you do a frequentist approach and hedge your bets and say, well, if the result, I didn't like the result, I'll ask Bayes?
I think that's cheating. But I mean, I think most of the trials seem to go one way or the other.
Okay.
And some of it is made more complex, brackets confusing, by the whole notion of adaptive randomization. So potentially increasing the allocation of interventions that are looking like they're beneficial. So you increase the allocation to that group, the randomization to that group.
Gotcha.
Within limits.
Kate Leslie, what did you think about yesterday? Did Mike summarize that well, or do you need to?
No, he did. It was terrific because a lot of us have the same questions as Monty about the future of these trials. I thought there were two great sessions. One of the speakers talked about data curation,
right?
Which when I get thrown out of medicine, I'm going to be a data curator.
So what is a data curation?
Well, we sort of think, you get a database and the nurses will put all the data in there and then we'll crunch it. Simple as that. But these databases in a big platform trial, they map it all out and they work out the relationship between all of the different variables. And in particular, when you're trying to match controls, so the controls are the controls for the whole study, and they're being compared against hydroxychloroquine and dexamethasone and this and that, and they have to make sure that the controls line up in terms of the timing. And I'm not an expert.
It's very complex.
So that was really good. But the last session was good because we heard from 3 groups who are setting up platforms in perioperative medicine, and there are others. And the question is, how are they going to collaborate?
Yeah.
If they're going to collaborate.
Yeah.
So one option is, as Steve Webb, who's the doyen of this, said, one platform to rule them all. And that's one option.
Uh-huh.
And the other end of the spectrum is competing platforms will get to the publication first and everyone else will be sort of vanquished model.
Yeah.
And then he talked about the possibility of a federation of perioperative trials, which will facilitate alignment of outcomes and exposure variables so that they're directly comparable, and then different meta-analytic techniques that might work. It was good. And Andy was there too, and coming from the perspective of someone at the start of their career rather than at the end of their career, I think there's challenges with respect to how your career might pan out in the world of platforms.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point that Kate makes. For a lot of junior researchers or early career researchers coming into this space, platform trials is a whole different level of understanding required, a whole new methodology that takes a lot of the frequentist models of the RCT, the randomized control trial, but then extends that quite a long way. And for someone trying to get into that space, I don't think it's as easy to get. You can't just set up your own platform trial on a small individual pilot basis. There's a lot more governance involved, a lot more statistical support needed. So I think it's going to be interesting over the next few years how we start bringing more early career researchers into that space. It's going to need to be more mentorship, maybe an apprenticeship model. But a lot of us who've sort of done our own pilot studies and then progressed those into an RCT type design, I think we'll have to find a different route to bring those early career researchers onto the programs.
So Tom Pinkney, who's a surgeon from Birmingham, who's particularly known for the Rossini trials, all about surgical site infection. I mean, some of their more recent studies, they've got multiple arms focusing on different surgical types, for example, and then the surgeons and the PPI engagement from that surgery type will rank the interventions. And he showed, very complex slide, but I think one of the routes for bringing people in is that each of those silos and each of those interventions had identified lead investigators and co-investigators, and there was a huge team of people involved who you could see would sort of gradually gain experience and become more senior, and I guess ultimately end up helping to run those trials.
Mike, surely the fundamentals are unchanged though. In other words, the allocation of treatments, randomization, blinding, bias, how to measure outcomes, are they all?
The fundamentals are unchanged, but in some cases, so the adaptive randomization, for example, took me a little while to get my head around the fact that could be, you could still get a reasonable result. I think the Bayesian approaches feel a little bit different, because one of the things about the Bayesian approaches is that, so if you base it on your prior assumption of what the likelihood of a treatment effect is, and then you decide that you've had enough events and you've got an answer, it's difficult to justify using Bayes doing another trial.
But as a young investigator, shouldn't you start with the fundamentals of research, and then you can put those fundamentals into a platform, can't you? Because understanding that the bias, for example.
So what is quite interesting,
Protocol adherence.
Quite a lot of the folk involved seem to have a sort of ClinEpi background, so that real methodological rigor around causation, all the things you were just alluding to, I think is very important.
So before I hand over to Kate, 2 questions for me then is that measuring outcomes is still hard consistently. How did the platform solve any of that? What's a wound infection?
Measuring outcomes is hard, whether it's obviously just a straight head-to-head trial or a platform trial. There was some really interesting novel solutions. So again, Tom Pinkney had some stuff around using patient-generated videos then sent to a central repository, but those would apply equally to a twin arm design or a platform design.
And the final thing from me is compliance with protocols or treatment requirements, because we know that that's in regular RCTs is a very great challenge, unless it's drug A versus drug B and someone injects it, or whatever it is.
All the same challenges, the need to have some measure of adherence in there to actually establish that you're testing what you're testing. So completely, the fundamentals are there. There's just a lot more complexity wrapped around them.
Yeah. So Kate, do you think the face of research and big RCTs and all these things, we headed in a new direction?
I think there's room for both models. There'll be platforms, and then there'll be organically arising research from centres all around the world. And I was thinking, as Mike and Andy and Monty were talking, that we have to ensure that people from diverse backgrounds, with different racial, ethnic backgrounds and gender backgrounds, and every sort of person will have the opportunity to participate in these trials, because it can be daunting for people outside the mainstream to break into a platform, and we need to make sure that works.
Yeah.
But it was great because it's one of a series of symposiums that's been supported by the British Journal of Anaesthesia, which is a charity with a purpose to, not only publish the journal but bring education to the masses. So it was a terrific symposium and very generous of them to sponsor it.
That's wonderful. Will there be any output from that? Will we see anything written up about what you guys talked about yesterday?
It was on the back of a review article for the centenary of the journal. The first author was Paul Miles, who's the convener of this meeting.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we do, speaking of Paul Miles, we do want to thank Paul for inviting Top Med Talk to be here at Prato this year. It's always wonderful to be in the room, hear everything that's going on, and be able to talk to everyone presenting and hear what's the latest and greatest. Anything else from you guys?
I've got a question just to the wider group. We've talked about the rigour of platform trials and involvement in platform trials, but just a question, does it matter to patients whether they're in a platform trial or an RCT, or if we're approaching them about that, does it make any difference to them enrolling in the trial, do people think?
Okay. The plain language statement or patient information sheet for platform trials can be quite complex. And in one of the sessions yesterday, they talked about how to make that simpler or whether it was possible. And then there are ethical issues about the control group. So do you tell the control group, well, the people in the hydrochloroquine group did worse than you, so, thumbs up, or did the people in the dexamethasone group do better than you, so thumbs down, all of those things. And this conference, we are constantly reminding ourselves that the research we're doing is on patients and for them and their families. We can get really stuck down into Bayesian theory and forget that there's a real life person at the end.
I mean, the other thing that I think is good for patients as a potential future patient is the adaptive randomization means that during the process of the trial, more people are likely to have a beneficial therapy if it's looking like it's doing well. Now, that can go wrong, and there's a couple of descriptions yesterday where they didn't check often enough, and you can be inadvertently adaptively randomizing into the worse outcome group.
Yeah.
So it's got to be done well, but when done well, it should be beneficial for patients. The other thing I'd say is it's good for the soul doing this kind of work in this gorgeous sort of classical architecture in Italy.
It really is. And the collaboration, the conversation, the friendships that are here, and then enjoying it in a beautiful place in the world. So we will, I'm sure, be talking more about that over the next couple days. Be sure to check out Top Med Talk for more conversations from Prato, from the European Society of Anesthesiology and Intensive Care, ANSCA, the work that Kate and Andy, both of you guys are on the headsets right now. Thank you so much for everything you did for Top Med Talk Down Under, which I'm sure we're going to be hearing more from as well. And thank you for listening. We will catch you in a little bit. All right. Cheers, everybody.